All right, let's go, because you know what I came in to do.
I don't get paid for overtime. I'm here to fight.
Terence has to understand, and I'm going to speak directly to you, Terence. What you have to understand is people are only going to respect you for what you do. If you're a fighter, people are going to respect you for being a fighter. People don't know you for being a businessman. So you put people in place that they respect to work that business out for you. Yep. Because people are just not going to be receptive to you and do things with you the way you expect them or want them to do it. The respect level is not there.
Is Sean realizing to run a podcast you have to say something TMZ like to catch attention? Or did he think out what he was saying? Like, you're not known as a businessman, you're known as a boxer. You get respect as a boxer, not as a businessman. Well, he hasn't got no respect from a lot of Errol Spence or PBC fans in certain sections of media for a long time. And look, me myself said I don't think his representation is right. I said that the other week because nothing was getting done. But whose fault was that? Al Heyman's or Terence Crawford's?
People don't know you for being a businessman. So you put people in place that they respect to work that business out for you.
Well, you're not going to get a bigger businessman in boxing than Bob Arum, and that's who Terence was signed to. He couldn't get him the Spence fight. He couldn't get him the Pacquiao fight.
Bob couldn't secure me the Spence fight when I was with him. So how you going to secure me the Spence fight when I'm not with him? So, you know, I'm moving forward with my career right now.
And then Bob, putting his 2 cents in on the Crawford-Spence negotiation, says this.
My thought is that I really don't know what happened with the negotiation, but I was always somewhat skeptical that they would result in a fight because Crawford had no promoter.
Okay, Bob, well, you're a promoter, but in the same interview you say this.
You know, a lot of people were kind of pointing the finger at you and Top Rank as to why the fight between Crawford and Spence couldn't happen, but now you're not in the picture and the fight still didn't happen. Do you feel somewhat vindicated?
I'm not vindicated. I didn't give a damn. I tried to make that fight happen. I was unable to make that fight happen.
So basically you're saying being a promoter doesn't guarantee success in making a cross-promotion fight. Because you're a promoter. To state the obviously contradicted himself, but, you know, he's old. We always use that excuse for Bob, he's old.
You got to go in with a promoter who is prepared to put up a big guarantee for your side. I mean, it was unfair for him to look at Al and ask for Al to put up a major guarantee because Al had no relationship with him.
So he's talking about Terence demanding a guarantee from Al Heyman. Eddie Hearn was talking about if Spencer Crawford was a blockbuster fight, there would have been no issues, citing that Anthony Joshua and Tyson Fury, both fighters didn't ask for guarantees because they knew they were set to make a killing. Once again, he's mentioning this guarantee. Him and Bob Arum were talking about a guarantee. Terence Crawford didn't ask for a guarantee, he asked for transparency. And boxing scene, I'm not going to say verbatim, but they're saying Hearn seemed to suggest that Crawford, a free agent, and his supposedly unrealistic financial expectations was more at fault than Heyman in causing talks to break down. Well, what are these supposedly unrealistic financial expectations?
Terence Crawford agreed to take the short end of the split and work off of no guarantee, and he wants to be able to just, have some transparency there related to it, since he's going to be working off of the net revenue. And so far, they have been unable to clear this up. It feels like Al Heyman is holding up the deal right now.
You hear that? No guarantee, lower end of the split. You can't commit no more than that before you walk away from the deal. Lower end of the split, no guarantee, getting paid off the net. No transparency on the gross. Porter's talking about you get respect as a boxer. No one knows you as a businessman. He's talking like boxers have never negotiated contracts previously. But that's false. I don't know what it is about Terence Crawford, but there's a section of people who talk down to him like, you don't know your place. Arum, media, boxing fans. I won't say Eddie Hearn was in that category, but he's talking rubbish. Talking absolute rubbish. Sean Porter, what is your motivation to be telling this guy that he can't box and negotiate contracts? That's almost what he's saying. Now let me read this little article here, and I'm going to ad-lib a little while I do it. It was not only fighters who found Sugar Ray Robinson a formidable opponent in money disputes. Even the rule that allows federal income taxes to be computed based on average earnings over a number of years sprang from a confrontation between Robinson and the Internal Revenue Service. But as champion, Robinson was especially aggressive in pursuing his own financial interests. A typical Robinson fight contract dictated that Robinson got the much larger portion of the gate and most or all of the money from television. It also dictated that if the challenger won, he had to give Robinson a rematch with his next fight, and Robinson would get most of the money from that too. It was that contractually mandated rematch which would serve him the best in the late 50s. And what you have to remember, right? Him being a tough negotiator was negotiating with the likes of Jim Norris and the International Boxing Club. That's the mob, right? And he wasn't having it. Ray did end up broke, but boxers unfortunately tend to do that. If you don't know who the IBC are, that's the International Boxing Club. They ran boxing in America. And Ray was one of the few, and when I say few, I mean few, fighters that they couldn't get their claws in. And within the industry, Ray was not liked because just like some of you think Terence Crawford don't know his place, they thought the same thing about Ray. Who is this boxer, this black boxer in the 50s? Who is he to demand terms in his favour? All Terence Crawford wanted was transparency. He didn't want a guarantee. He took the lower end of the split. There's still a lot of corruption in boxing, but compared to the 50s in America and even the 60s, when the Keefe-Over Commission shut down the mob, it's not comparable. They've had the Muhammad Ali Act. There is no need or reason that a boxer should come up second to a promoter in 2022. Especially one as accomplished and gifted as Terence Crawford.
I'm catching a flashback.
Hagler, in any case, emerged from the Briscoe fight with Benny's title. For the next 2 years, people would be calling Hagler the uncrowned champion. While Hagler had trouble interesting big-time promoters, Sugar Ray Leonard found himself fighting them off. Once it became clear that Ray was going to turn pro, he surrounded himself with a trusted team from his amateur gym. Dave Jacobs and Janks Morton had been the volunteer coaches. At the Palmer Park Recreation Center, Michael G. Traynor, a successful attorney, was initially brought on board to handle the legal and financial aspects of Leonard's career. Although Traynor had no experience in boxing, Morton, who played on the Wildwood Manor Exxon softball team for which the lawyer pitched and later managed, he was vouching for Mike Traynor's honesty and intelligence. When Morton initially broached the idea of representing Leonard, Traynor admitted he had no inkling of what the boxer's services might be worth. "Do you think he can make 20 grand a year?" said Traynor. Morton said more like 100,000. Morton's estimate would also prove to be way below what Leonard would eventually earn as a pro. Nobody could have expected at that time he would be one of the most influential figures in the sport. The final piece to the puzzle, Angelo Dundee, was initially approached by Washington publicist Charlie Brutman and retained for a 15% cut of Leonard's purses with the title of manager. Sugar Ray Leonard Incorporated was following the lead of the original management group overseeing the career of the young Cassius Clay when it aligned itself with Dundee. After Cassius Clay won the Olympic light heavyweight gold in Rome in 1960, he turned professional under the guidance of the so-called Louisville Group, a consortium of businessmen from his Kentucky hometown. They in turn enlisted Dundee as Clay's trainer. Mike Traynor, the lawyer, would handle contractual matters. Of course, the story would be amiss if Don King didn't have his name in it. Don King had weighed in with what was on paper by far the largest offer, a guaranteed $200,000 to promote Leonard's career. But after reading the fine print, Traynor realized that its terms would virtually turn Leonard into an indentured servant and rejected it. Traynor, by his own estimate, knew nothing about boxing. When he agreed to oversee Leonard's affairs, he undertook a diligent study of the business side of the sport and came away convinced that there had to be a better way to do it. Why should what the fighter earn be dependent on what the promoters will pay him, asked Traynor. Why don't we just put on the fights ourselves and hire a promoter? Following another lead from Ali's career, Trainer initially rounded up 21 Maryland businessmen, most of them members of the softball team for which he and Janks Morton played. The investors put up $1,000 apiece on the understanding that their investment on Sugar Ray Leonard Incorporated would pay an annual return of 8%. As it turned out, the seed money was hardly needed. It was repaid in full from what CBS paid to televise Leonard's pro debut a few months later. The difference between our arrangement and R. Lee's was that Ray still owned 100% of himself, said Trainer. From a business standpoint, it wasn't the shrewdest investment these guys ever made, but they were mainly in it for the fun. It was kind of like having your own team to root for in the NCAA tournament. By the time we bought them out, each of them made $80 for their 1,000 stakes. Fortunately, none of them were really doing it for the money. They just wanted to help Ray get started. Instead of going the traditional route, Team Leonard hired Daniel E. Doyle Jr. to be its promoter of record. A successful college basketball coach at Trinity, Doyle had dabbled in many aspects of the sporting world. Doyle took out a promoter's license in several states. Sugar Ray Leonard Incorporated paid him a flat fee. On the 5th of February 1977, when Leonard took on Luis Vega at the Baltimore Civic Center, CBS paid Ray $40,000 for his debut.
Against Luis Vega.
Ray won all 6 rounds on all 3 scorecards for a unanimous decision. In the third pro outing, with Hagler performing on the undercard, Leonard stopped Vinny DeBarros in Hartford, Connecticut. The bout represented the first installment on a $350,000 6-fight contract that Trainer had negotiated with ABC.
Alright, so JANIBEK has come in for a lot of criticism recently, but his boogeyman status shouldn't be determined on the Denzel Bentley performance. It shouldn't be. He didn't satisfy expectation for a lot of people, but it shouldn't be judged on that. It should be judged on his willingness to take on the baddest fighters out there. That's what it should be based on. If his boogeyman reputation is built on the likes of Andrade and Munguia, he had the opportunity to fight for that interim belt, but didn't go for it. If it's built on people ducking him, well, he shouldn't be ducking either. Taking on Carlos Adames is an excellent fight. I mean, since Jamal Charlo ain't doing nothing to face his number 1 contender Adames, what's better than the boogeyman to show him how it's done? Carlos Adames versus JANIBEK. It's a good fight. I mean, JANIBEK, after the Bentley performance, said, all champions saw or heard my 12 rounds. I hope they don't avoid me now. Earlier, everyone was afraid of being knocked out. Now they have hope of not getting knocked out. Maybe they'll step up. And Carlos Adames replied, I'm ready. Easy to make. Boxing fans will love it. Let's do it. I can only assume that Choi would sign for Matchroom to get big fights. You know they have Alicia Baumgardner on there. And I'm not surprised the WBA have ordered this fight. I'm not surprised. It's for Undisputed against Baumgardner. It was just a couple of weeks back that the WBA ordered their WBA champion Erica Cruz to face Amanda Serrano for Undisputed. So, although they're not that effective in the men's game in making decisions like this, it seems they're all about unification trumps mandatory in the women's game, but not in the men's game. It's a good look. If Choi doesn't take it, I don't know what to say. Like, in a situation like this, there should be some kind of ruling that if Choi was to decline the fight, then Baumgardner is undisputed by default. Well, let's consider that Chris Lovejoy, in 21 fights, has only beat one fighter with a winning record. Only one. Yes, he has 20 knockouts. But when he did step up against Manuel Charr last year, he was woefully out of his depth in Cologne, Germany. I've also noticed that all of his winning fights, his 20 winning fights, have been in Mexico.
Why is that?
Now, I didn't see Chris Lovejoy's last fight. It couldn't have been that well promoted. Mexico, not a hotbed for heavyweights, really. Now, Johnny Fisher, he last fought at the Wembley Arena, where Katie Taylor headlined against Carbajal. Johnny Fisher sold 3,000 tickets. This was on DAZN. But yet, Chris Lovejoy is asking, because Johnny Fisher called him out. I don't know who called who out first. But Chris Lovejoy, he's called out Johnny too. But Chris Lovejoy is asking where the fight should take place. England! Of course, unless Johnny fancies taking a holiday, it has to be in England. Where else? It's not going to be in Mexico. When do you think it's going to be in Mexico, Chris? Why don't get no? Wasn't Don King? Didn't he have a promotional contract with Don King? And I've gone through a lot of the fights. I can't see Don King's name on none of the cards. I see Jaime Munguia on one of the cards posted up as the matchmaker in 2020. Boxing's a weird sport, man. It's just weird. But yeah, it has to be in the UK, surely. You get a chance to fight on the zone in the UK? That's the biggest thing to happen to your career so far. And it'd be fun watching it. You know, two big sluggers throwing big overhand rights and left hooks. See someone land up on their back. More than likely it will be Chris. But it's a big opportunity for him, isn't it? According to Tyson Fury, in his last fight against Dillian White, in the fifth he said he hit Dillian with a left hook to the body, slipping inside and breaking him with that shot. Once he could see Dillian was in pain, that's when he started talking. He said White dropped his arms immediately. He was hurting. He then taunted Dillian and said, "Are you hurting, body snatcher?" He says Dillian grimaced through his gum shield. "I am," he mumbled. Tyson said he couldn't believe what he was hearing. And then Tyson continued to taunt him and said, "All right then, you're going to get some more." He also said he mocked and laughed at White as the Brixton man tried to fight back. He said he took his time, picked the strikes, snapping White's head back again and again, waiting for his weaker side to open up for the perfect punch. He was swinging wildly and missing by miles. Fury said he laughed at Dillian White. "You think that's ever going to hit me? You must be joking." Then obviously he delivered that right uppercut and it was all over. I don't think Dillian will admit to that. It will be interesting if he has a response. Malik Scott believes that Andy Ruiz is not a tough fight for a disciplined Deontay Wilder. He doesn't believe the likes of Anthony Joshua or USYK are competitive fights for Deontay Wilder. He believes Tyson Fury is the only test, and he even believes that this new, improved, disciplined version of Wilder beats Fury. Well, we have to see the new, improved version. We have to see that first. It's hard to say how much beating Helenius told us. I mean, we're talking about a man who got floored by Harold Sconiers as a pro. You're talking about a man who got staggered and hurt against Eric Molina. You're talking about a man who needed his bailout power, and he does have bailout power, against Spilker. And Spilker got caught, not making an excuse, he got caught, because he got ambitious and started chasing Wilder down, rather than continuing the in and out tactics he was employing successfully throughout the fight. What about the guy who needed the state commission to give him precious seconds after the interval against Luis Ortiz? Time will tell. Time will tell. I think a lot of what Malik is saying is smoke without no proof of fire. But yo, it will be interesting if he takes the Andy Ruiz fight. It will be interesting to see how he does there. It will be interesting to see how he does against the likes of USYK and Joshua. And maybe even a fourth Fury fight.